And welcome everybody to Mind Shifters Radio. And today is Tuesday, April the 21st, 2026. Welcome to the show. Mike will be with us here in a second. Welcome Susan, Melissa, Donald. Good to see you all. How's everybody doing? Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Fine. How are you?
Good. Good. It's been a quiet couple of days. We don't have kids again until tomorrow. And so we got a lot of the planting done and the
Nice.
garden's upset and yeah. So welcome, Michael. I'm getting an echo here. I'm going to turn my speaker down a little.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. Honored that we get to get together one more time and see what kind of exciting things are happening in your world. As Jeannie said, we got gardens going, lots of tomatoes in the ground, asparagus. We've been about our fourth or fifth harvest, and fruit trees. We're rocking. Anybody got anything to share? Anything exciting? Anything to report? Not everybody at once, though, please. All right, well, yesterday we were talking about the idea of Rukha and the Shakinta, correlated or opposite ends of the breath, the presence of the pulses that bring healing and reorganization throughout physiology once resistance is overcome. And the resistance that we're talking about is resistance to truth. Most people want to proclaim their truth. That is, that the reality they hold in their mind, no matter how much hostility or fear they have about it, has to be true because, after all, I can see it in my mind. And the insistence that if I can see it in my mind and it's out there, then it must be because of somebody or something else out there, rather than recognizing that if I deny the truth that it's in my mind, if I live in denial of it, and this is, of course, the essence of the why is this happening to me again experience, then I'm going to create that very circumstance over and over and over and over again. But I'll pretend and play the game that, well, but you see, it really is out there. Well, but you see, you're a creator. And yes, it really is out there because you're a creator and you've created it. But most people live in resistance to that. And what the breath does, when we look at this Rukha, the Aramaic word or words for this activity of the breath, Rukha actually being a word that represents the elemental forces in Aramaic, and then Dikucha being that which is proper for humans in the Aramaic, i.e. that which was designed or set apart, the quality of breath set apart for humans. And so we have these eternal forces, and you'll remember that the Beatitudes, one of the results of actually living the Aramaic Beatitudes is that we get to live, or the objective is to live, instead of in perception, to live in the eternal forces. And so when one moves into living in the eternal forces, one of those eternal forces is the breath. You look at how much time people spend holding their breath, and the exact thing that we're doing when we're holding our breath and living in the lie of the mind, in the game of blame, it's out there, it's your fault, it's happening. No, I didn't create this again and again and again and again and again in my life, it's all somebody else's fault. See, I want the solution out there. I don't want to have to go in here and do the work of cleaning this up in me so that I refrain from creating again. I want it to change. I want the result out there. So the denial process relates to when I think or speak as though something out there is the cause of what's moving in here, then I dissociate from what's moving in here. I hide it from myself. And then I wonder why it comes and kicks me in the butt. And when I dissociate from it, not only do I want to blame out there, but I want the resolution to happen out here without cleaning up the cause of the problem, without dealing with the root. And the role that the breath plays is that, and you've heard me say it before, and I'm really developing the brain cells. Part of what I was talking about yesterday is I'm understanding more and more about Rukha, is that there has to be sufficient breath moving within the system to activate what I call, or what I've started calling, and this is something I've just created as a way to represent it. No foundation in Aramaic, no proclamation of that, just saying when we're in resistance, remember the word Satan means the resistor, one who misleads. Most people live their lives in Satan, in resistance. And the resistance includes not only holding the breath, but shutting down, hiding from oneself what one is creating the untoward result with over and over and over and over again. So we might even change the title of my book to Why Is This Happening to Me Continuously? Like, gee, it doesn't matter where I go, how far I escape. Every new geographic location that I come to, there it is facing me again. Why? Because you're a creator and you want it to change out there without going in here. That's called Satan. That's living literally in the Aramaic sense, being trapped in Satan. So what do you need to do to overcome Satan? You need to have sufficient breath moving for that Dikucha factor to kick in. When that Dikucha factor kicks in, and everybody, I think most everybody on the show has experienced still point breathing, or maybe not everybody. In any event, you'll remember the moment as you were engaging in the still point process, you'll remember the moment where the energy kicked in. And all of a sudden, something started to shift. A transformation took place. That's when the Dikucha factor kicks in. When activated, literally, that's when the Dikucha factor weakens the physiological resistance that holds the dis-ease process in place. In other words, it weakens Satan. And that resistance overcome by the Dikucha factor, by the activity of the breath, transforms, corrects, and reveals truth. And at that point, and everybody who's hit still point, you'll remember the serenity of that. That's the point where one enters into the serenity that passes all understanding. In the Aramaic, when they talk about the peace that passes all understanding, the word isn't peace. Peace is a word that comes from war. Serenity was the word, our natural state. A serenity that is not logical, that is not rational, that cannot be figured out. And you can't have that as long as you live in denial, in resistance, and are holding on to something that never belonged within your system. So when truly honored, this Shakinta, this existent, persistent, imminent presence of love that literally keeps us together. Think of it as gravitation that holds us together. When you truly honor it and you get to experience it as imminent, it is right there with you. It always has been. It never left. It can't leave. And the way that it's accessed is, number one, through breath. The Shakinta The immanent presence is always physiologically within us, although we can create all kinds of noise and distractions, excuse me, and pretend it's not there. But through the activation of the breath, especially getting enough breath flowing that the Dekucha factor kicks in, willingness, of course, is part of that. Taking responsibility. You can't simultaneously breathe enough and keep playing the blame game about how what's happening in your life is caused by somebody else. So through breath, willingness, responsibility, forgiveness, alignment, you can't get enough energy flowing in your physiology if your antenna is out of alignment. And that's kind of the core of the quantum still point process, is getting that energy, that antenna back into alignment that has been misaligned by physical, mental, or emotional trauma. And then you have to be willing to give it your attention. If your attention is on the world, if it's all about what's going on out there, if any one of these factors is missing, you can't have it. You can't have it without the breath. You can't have it without the willingness. You can't have it without accepting responsibility. You can't have it without applying forgiveness. You can't have it without alignment. And the final thing is, you've got to get loose of the busyness of the world. The training. Think about newborns. What do we do with newborns? We keep talking to them and showing them shiny objects and shiny things, and look at this and look at this and look at this and look at this and look at that. And all of the attention is focused out there. What if we take our newborns and our small children, we spend time showing them there's a rich inner world? So you've got to take the time, and you've heard me say it before, the most popular drug of the culture is busyness. I haven't mentioned it for some time, but several years ago, we had some folks who were we went to a super high security prison in Ionia, Michigan, an old Civil War facility where they took all of the most troublesome, all of the most despicable, as the world would call it, prisoners, and put them in this one facility. It was a men's prison, and we went and we did the Why Is This Happening to Me Again work, and found a great deal of interest. A couple of folks that were local teachers up there, when we did a couple of workshops in the prison. And it was interesting. It's I mean, I've been in, I can't count how many prisons, but it's the only prison where we went in there. The warden of the prison was at the door, greeted us, walked us through the registration process, and walked us up to our classroom and stayed in the class the whole time. So, I mean, it was awesome. The reception we had and the attention that was paid. So a couple of the local teachers of this work went in and followed up with a support group. And it has always been a requirement. This was from way back when, actually started before Dan and I created Laws of Living, the precursor to Laws of Living. There was a requirement that in order to participate, the inmate had to, it was a program designed for the prisons. The inmate had to pay to do the class. What they found is if they didn't pay, they didn't participate. They didn't fully go through the process. And this particular prison, these people are in there from 25 years to life. And, the best they could hope for was, slavery's still legal in America in the prison system. And so they were, get 25 cents an hour for working in the commissary, but that was about all the access to money that they had. So instead of a physical or a financial payment, what we set up was that in order to participate in Laws of Living, they did several weeks of support groups, that each day they were required to do 5 worksheets. And when Laws of Living started, the 5 worksheets a day were their ticket into the Laws of Living class. Now, this is a very high security prison. Literally, the inmates are, unless they've got a job in the commissary or whatever, laundry, they're locked in their cells 23 out of 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Get an hour to go out in the exercise yard. Every one of them, they were, oh, I want to do, yeah, I've got to do this. This is so great. This is so wonderful. I've got to do this. Every one of them had exactly the same excuse for not having the 5 worksheets a day. Guess what it was? They were too busy. If you're not going to take the time to give the attention to your work, then one of the factors that you need to have is missing. And you're not going to make the breakthroughs that you want to make. You can want it all you want. So again, the requirements are breath, willingness, responsibility, forgiveness, alignment, and attention. If you're too busy, well, okay. So what those things do when set in alignment with the tools is they bring one to the realization that love is life itself. This Shakinta is that life pulsing throughout our structures, flowing through ourselves. And the idea, when you activate the breath directly and pay attention to those pulses, is you come to know directly the indwelling of life within your human temple. It's not an external event. It's not an external experience. It's an internal experience. This singular vital force called the Shakinta on one end. On the other end of the Shakinta, again, as I said yesterday, we call it the breath. The really words, and this is my offering, my best understanding at this point, is that outside of the structure, this vital elemental force is called the breath. Inside of it's called the Shakinta. And it bridges the creator's essence with human experience. And that delivers restoration and guidance within the self. And it's available to anybody who's willing to do the work. Doesn't matter what caste you're in, what class you're in, how much money you've got or how much money you don't have, how beautiful you are, how ugly you are, what part of the world you're from, what religion you are. It doesn't, none of that matters. None of that matters. Are you willing to become acquainted with the breath? Are you willing? Are you going to take responsibility? Do you understand you're going to apply forgiveness? Are you going to do what it takes to get your physiology into alignment? And are you going to give your work the attention that it needs? And then, the objective of the hands-on energy field work, the still point energy field work, the still point breathing and or the quantum still point, it's all designed to open one to the level of physiological alignment and breath alignment that introduces this reparative pulsing. And when you pay attention, and you haven't heard me say this until I personally started to engage in a daily breath practice, because I didn't have the experience to talk about it. But when you engage, you pay attention to these pulses, and you find that not only are they physiologically reparative, but they will reveal to you any truth that you need to know. It is literally this transformative flow or movement of love physiologically manifested as presence. And then the next step comes, well, before we go to the next step, let's see if anybody has any thoughts. Is that fitting, making sense? Does that leave anybody with any questions about what I'm talking about? hope you were with us yesterday. If you weren't, then you might want to catch yesterday's show to add to what we're saying. Is that fitting and making sense for everybody? Hit mute button if you have a thought. Nobody? All of that said, and there's not one thought to add? Well, then the next step is to move into what in the ancient times they told us was something that existed in a stone temple up there. And of course, once people were convinced it was in the stone temples, then the gatekeepers got their paycheck. The Pharisees, in the ancient Aramaic, there is a phrase that speaks of the deepest physiological place of connecting. It was called the Holy of Holies, and it was extremely restrictive. And the Pharisees that Yeshua corrected and corrected and corrected all through his work held that it was in this stone temple that they controlled. It was their exclusive domain. But in the Aramaic worldview, what they called the Kela, or the temple, was understood as a palace or a container for Rukha Kucha, or the Shakinta. That's your physiology. At the moment of conception, a temple was created, the true temple, not made of stone, not made of and by hands. And once you become acquainted, literally spending sufficient time that your home is in the eternal forces, in particular in the breath, you become that acquainted. Then the revealer, Rukha Kucha, the Shakinta, will direct you into the Holy of Holies. So when you go to the Aramaic, you move from a physical building out there, a stone room, special stone room that's very restricted. I mean, it was so restricted that, the high priest, literally when the high priest went in, they would tie a rope to his waist. Because if he died in there, nobody else was allowed to go in. Only one who was without sin could go into that place. And they convinced us that it was about a physical room. Now, they were telling the truth about the place, but it isn't a physical room. It is a place within yourself. And when they spoke about only the high priest, you are the high priest. And to achieve that status, this is not some kind of mystical thing. To achieve that status as high priest, you literally have to be free of the influence of sin. And remember that sin in Aramaic is nothing to do with some evil, terrible, awful thing you've done. It's simply an archery term that means off the mark. You can't enter that subtlest vibratory energetic space carrying garbage, carrying energies that are off the mark. You just can't do it. Hostility, fear, rage, guilt, grief, condemnation, gossip, slander, vengeance. You can't go there. The two are inconsistent with each other. So it's not some sort of mysterious thing. What happens is that when you engage, when you live in the breath, when you give enough attention to the breath, when you've forgiven as to the hostilities and fears of your generations. Remember that story of the Jews wandering in the desert for 40 years? Do you really think they were talking about a hot, sandy place? No. The desert is just a term for the unconscious. What had to happen to get out of? I mean, do you really think that they spent 40 years wandering in a 35 square mile area, lost? These people who knew about astronomy and certainly knew that, if you woke up with the sun and you followed the sun for the day in a 35 square mile desert, you'd be out of the desert in a very short period of time. It wasn't about a physical place. And then, read that passage and what happened. They were talking about a truth here. This is a fact. This isn't some kind of mysterious mumbo jumbo religious stuff. It's a simple fact that in order to free yourself, to come into full experience of yourself as you are designed as a human being, the old generation has to die off. How did they get out of the desert? What did they say had to happen to get out of the desert, which is just a code word for the unconscious, into the promised land? What was the promised land? Was it a land of milk and honey? Well, metaphorically, yes, but not literally. It was simply to live in the place where you know yourself as a conscious creator and you only create things that are consistent with your true being. You don't engage in any other frequency because no other frequency has any attraction to you. The only way another frequency other than love has attraction to you is that it matches something that's in you and there's a resonance and a draw toward it. But the draw toward that which is less than love is a draw toward, if you've got the tool of forgiveness, of freeing yourself from that. So when you go from the Hebrew to the Aramaic, you've now moved from a stone room in a building to stepping inside of your own living temple. The breath, dissolving the activity of energies off the mark, leaves you free from the influence of sin. Now the revealer, and I can't tell you how to do it. I can only tell you that it's there. There is an uplink in the upper part of your brain that is a direct uplink to the creator. I can't tell you how to get there. I can tell you it's there. And I can tell you that the Shakinta breath, the slash between them, they're one word, my offering, will guide you there. When you free yourself of the influence of hostility and fear, projection and blame, when you meet those 5 criteria that we spoke about, then you will be, you remember Yeshua talked about the gate is narrow. Few will be that find it. It's not a gate outside the city or out in the desert or anywhere on the planet. The gate is inside your own temple. You've got to free yourself of the influence of energies. They talked about, and it kind of sounds kind of weird, but when you get down to it, they said the creator can't stand sin. It's not the creator can't stand sin. It's that the creator is absolute, pure, perfect love. And this thing that's off the mark, if it comes near to that active presence of love, it literally burns off. It literally is fried. So when you give the attention to your work, your breath, to freeing yourself of the hostility, fear, when you give attention to that instead of your disease states, instead of what the world is playing in the way of games, then the last step will be taken and the creator will show you exactly, the creator's breath will show you exactly how to. And I'm talking now about, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience, I'm talking about the creator's breath will guide you exactly into that narrow gate. How to, millimeter by millimeter, how to align yourself and plug in. The purpose of Rukha, the Shakinta, is to guide you there and connect you with that direct uplink. to your true humanity. And you remember the statement was made, be still and know. Be still and know. Is it worth it? It's a silly question. What did they say in Revelations? To he that overcomes, and overcoming is a good word to speak about the influence of the hostility and fear-based mind, of the generational mind, of the desert, of the unconscious. To he that overcomes, what happens? What it says, he or she will not taste of the second death. What's the second death? The first death is the death of the awareness of yourself as a being created out of conscious, active, present love, whose home is designed to be in the breath. That's the first death, and that's lost. The second death is when physiology falls over and no longer has breath in it. So what is outlined is, if you're willing to do that work, what it says is you will become a pillar. What's a pillar? But a fixture in the temple. What's the temple? Your physiology of my God, of the Creator, and shall go out no more. In other words, you're going to give up death. You're going to stop killing yourself. How do we kill ourselves? Go back and look. How did death begin? With man, death began. We made the process up. We do it to ourselves by our engagement. Every disease, every disorder, anything that's falling apart in your mind or body or life is a result of your creative process. Are you willing to do what it takes? Are you willing to become fully acquainted with the breath? Will you step into willingness to be responsible for everything? Will you consistently and persistently apply forgiveness? Or when the stress is up and the chips were down, will you talk about somebody else? Willingness and forgiveness means when there's a conflict, you don't stand around and talk about somebody else. If you step away from that conflict, you step away in a conversation about yourself and what your work is. That's willingness. That's responsibility. And then, having taken that level or accepted that level of responsibility, then applying forgiveness. Forgiveness moves the energetic patterns that physiologically misalign us. And alignment starts to become natural. Does that sound like it's worth giving your attention to? When you do, then you'll experience life, love, pulsing throughout your structure, and a whole new level of experience happens. And I see, Miss Susan, you got your mute button off. So what's on your
I
mind,
do.
young lady? Come on in.
Well, I have a very down-to-earth, practical question about the
Yes.
breath. I was aiming to be a concert pianist for many years, and I was, and I've stopped doing it for various reasons. And I've always wondered, why am I so reluctant to go back to the piano? And I don't feel as if I should, or have nothing to prove exactly, or maybe there is. But my question is, I did go to play the other day. Sometimes I play for 5 minutes and then I say, okay, that's enough. I notice I
Right.
don't breathe when I play. I do not breathe.
Really?
I
Well,
hold
that's
my breath.
interesting.
And I'm
Wow.
thinking, okay, I need to go back to square one and
Mm-hmm.
learn pieces, maybe with programmed breathing into each set of notes. Or there are phrases. Can I breathe with the phrases? And I'm starting to pay attention to that, hoping that breathing during playing, obviously I breathe because I'm alive.
Right.
But
It's that third level, that set apart breath that you want to engage in. It's not
say,
just taking a breath. Remember in the
okay,
Aramaic, we talked about there are three levels. There's the breath, everything. The chicken, the dog, the cat, you and I all breathe the same breath.
yeah,
That's not what we're talking about here. There's the breath that is incoherent, that is based in hostility for. That's not the breath we're talking about here. In Aramaic, Rukha Dekucha would be described as the set apart breath designed by the Creator for humans, a breath consciously engaged in from the presence of love. That's the breath we're talking about. So that's the one that you want to bring into your playing. But a deeper question I would ask is, so if you find yourself sporadically breathing, of course you have to breathe or you'd fall over sitting
right.
behind the piano after all those hours. But if you really tap in, what's behind that holding of the breath? What was the motivator? Was there something that pushed, manipulated, forced you into playing that
That's the thing.
needs to be that you need to be resolved? You need to resolve what is it that you're holding the breath over that you notice when you're sitting playing? I mean, did you have a teacher that was brutal that you shut
No,
down on? But what do you have any concept, any clue as to what that might be about?
well, I've had two experiences. When I first started piano lessons, I went with a friend, watched what she did, watched her teacher, and then the teacher knew I was starting in the next week. He gave me the beginner's book, and I thought I was supposed to learn all the pieces in it, not just the first one. So when I
Right,
came back the next week, I had them all ready. I was it was easy for me to learn to play the piano, and I was good from the get-go, and
right.
was performing as a young person, won a competition when I was 12. But and while I was playing for him the first time, the first book, and he said, "What, you've learned them all?" And I said, "Yeah, I thought that was the assignment." He said, "Well, I'm glad you didn't know."
Okay.
But he said, "No, I didn't mean you had to learn them all." Um, but a voice in my mind, and there's no way of knowing whose voice that is, except that we're all connected and God is connected too. I heard the voice saying, "Pay attention to this. You're going to be doing this. This is very important." As a little kid, I
Mm,
heard that said to me, and I was 9. I think that's when I started lessons.
wow.
So I went on that idea that this is it for me, but I transposed it into, this is how I'm going to get what I want. This is how I'm going to get people to love me, to admire me, to
Mm,
accept me. We had a kind of a violent household, and when it wasn't violent, there were two emotions that were very much allowed: rage and giddy happiness. Processing softer feelings, they were a terrible embarrassment, and you didn't do those. So I think I thought that I could get where I needed to go because music had such tenderness in it. It had all the stuff I was missing at home. So I got good and I got a lot of praise and a lot of recognition. But Michael, I never loved it. I practiced 4 hours a day, starting in high school, all the way through college, all the way from early marriage, all the way through two babies. And then I just couldn't do it anymore because I
mm,
was doing it for the wrong reason.
right.
But when you talk,
Propitiation.
what?
Propitiation.
Yeah, doing the
Remember our
right thing for
definition,
the wrong
PSL,
reason.
right thing for the wrong reason. And so my take would be that you might want to start doing some worksheets around, and I think the key word here is performative. Oh, if I
Yeah,
perform, then I'll be approved of whatever it
yep,
is.
totally,
Okay.
it is.
That sounds like where the work and notice what just happened with your breath. As you said that, it sounded like there was a restriction. That's probably where the breath opening is going to happen for you.
Where? What do you mean?
Around healing this idea of I have to perform. This has to be a performance in order for me
Oh,
to
and when I was doing still point with you, I had to do it right. I had to absolutely had to do it right, or it wouldn't work. And I wouldn't get your approval. And there's Jeannie saying, so and so, open your mouth more, or shut your mouth more, or do. And I was thinking, oh my God, she's getting instructions. So it was all in the wrong department, all of it. My fault. And I'm not blaming Jeannie. You were just monitoring people's work. And if you said, oh, I remember you complimented Roma once, and I was jealous. I thought, how does she get to get that compliment? How does she do it right? And I can't do it right. It was a mess. No wonder I didn't want to do it right.
There's where your whole next piece of work is my offering.
Oh boy, I
I
guess
think you
so.
just nailed it.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Performance for approval.
Yep.
Yeah, it sounds like your 77 times 70 worksheet issue. So sounds like you're ready for the next level. Nice insight. That's awesome.
Oh, it's been coming for a while, but thanks. Yeah. All right. Back to it.
Holding the space for it. Awesome.
Thanks. Hey,
Breathing with you.
it's going to be pretty basic.
I think you need to get your buns down here to Virginia.
I'm not starting with that. That's too hard. I have to start gently in my own house.
Okay. Well, we'll hold the space in the meantime then and
Thanks.
support you in that.
Thank you, Michael.
And I'm sure that Tim Bingham will hold the space for that too. I'm sure that if you ask for that level of support, he'll be delighted to
He would. Yeah, he would.
hold the space. In fact, you might dig out the energy field sheets and review them, go over them, and ask him if he'll just gently do those for you while you're breathing.
Oh, yeah, he would
And
do that.
probably
Yeah.
and probably there's less of a need, at least as I would assess and my experience of your relationship with Tim Bingham, that there's less of a need to perform there than probably anywhere else in your world.
Oh, that's true.
So
Yeah.
you're joining you in breathing a free breath with that.
Okay. Thanks.
All right.
I'll mute
Delighted.
myself.
And I'll just offer one more thought as I'm breathing in your stead here. Pay attention to your heart as you do it.
Okay, say
Pay
more.
attention to pay attention to your physical heart as you step into that wider breath. I think that's physiologically, that's just the sense I get of the area that's probably going to need to open.
Okay. I don't know what you're talking about, but I might find out.
Just to pay attention, just as you're,
Okay.
if Tim will do that energy field work with you when you lay down to the breathe, just physically be aware of the area of your heart as you step into that deeper, fuller, connected breath.
Okay.
Sweet. Awesome.
Okay.
Good catch. Nice catch. That one's going to change your life, young lady. That's fabulous.
Okay.
All
At this
right.
stage of the game. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, listen. Well, remember, he that overcomes, they will not taste of, but instead will get to do the New Year's party at Heartland in 4949.
Right. I know what you think about that, and you know what I think about that. So let's not
That's
get
why I
into
brought it up. That's why I brought it up. Well, go read it. Go read it in Revelations.
it.
See what it says. It's pretty crisp. It's pretty exacting. In fact, let me look here. To he that overcomes, and let's get it exact. What does it say?
So Don Hangy said, sounds like the Andre Agassi story. I didn't know about that. He's a great tennis player. Did he do it for the wrong reason? Yeah, maybe a
So
lot.
Revelation,
Yeah.
the him that overcometh, I will give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of the Creator. To he that overcometh, he shall not be hurt of the second death. To him that overcometh, I will give to eat of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone, and in that stone a new name written, which no one knoweth, saveth the one that receiveth it. He that overcometh and keepeth my word to the end, works to the end, to him or her I will give the power over nations. To he that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in a white raiment, and will not blot his name out of the book of life, but will confess that name before my Father and the angels. To he that overcometh, will make them a pillar in the temple of the Creator, and they shall go out no more. I will write upon him or her the name of the Creator, and the name of the city of the Creator. To him that overcometh, I grant to sit on my throne. That's in Aramaic is the seat of power, even as I also overcame and am sat down with my Father on his throne. And the final, to him or her that overcometh, they shall inherit all things. And love will be the creator, and you shall be the son or the daughter. A few little edits there, but basically, it's a pretty gigantic promise if we overcome this need to perform or whatever our particular energy is that holds us back from the full experience of both the Shakinta and the breath of the Creator. Some pretty monumental promises. Like, wow. So, once again, write the date on your calendar, December 31st, 4949. Oh, well, thank you for that interlude, that piece of information, Susan. That's
You're
awesome.
welcome. You're a
That's
good sport. I'm going
I
to
think
mute so you can get right back to it.
cool. Like that one's a gift to everybody. So thank you. So anyone else anything to share? We've got about 10 minutes. TJ, you came in just at the cusp of Susan sharing, but she's been a concert pianist all her life and realized that that the core of playing the piano was not done for enjoyment, but because it was a way to perform and get approval. And realizing that's the work that she's ready to do on the next level. So just fill you in, catch you up on what was happening when you came in. And I'd love to hear somebody else's thoughts. And if not, then let's take a few minutes to just step into a place of breathing. I'm just going to invite you all to just allow yourself to soften. And I'm going to invite you to imagine that when you take a breath in, you want to draw your breath all the way from the bottom of your feet up through your whole structure, all the way from the top of your head down through your feet. And allow this breath, Rukha Dukudsha, to enter fully and permeate every cell in your structure. So allow yourself to engage the breath that spreads itself fully inside your humanness. If there's anywhere that is in resistance to that breath permeating, pay extra attention there. Take the breath and let it soften. Gently, permeating every cell of your structure. The idea is not to push the breath. The idea is to surrender into the breath, softening, bringing awareness to any places that are in resistance, and just allow the breath to spread by surrendering to it, by receiving it. Let go of any thought of taking the breath and focus into receiving the breath. It's not that you're going to effort or direct the breath. You're going to direct your tissue to soften and open, to allow your attention to be softened and quiet. Allow the whole breathing mechanism. And when you really tap in, the whole breathing mechanism will move right down to the very base of your sacrum and all the way up to the top of your head. As you breathe, you may feel sparks, pinches of release. As you extend your breath, this oftentimes is experienced more in the extremities. And those little twinges of relief, sometimes they can be a physiological, release in tissue where the tissue sort of does a jerking motion. And that's when the fullness of the breath, not just air, but the fullness of the breath, reaches into places that have been cut off from circulation, from breath. Be aware as you move the breath in, as these embers of energy begin to grow and glow. They may well turn into a pulse. And that pulse is the Shakinta pulse. If you feel that pulsing, when you feel that pulsing, spend time with it, pay attention to it. It carries information. To deepen that pulse, let gravity and surrender draw the breath deep into your belly, down into your pelvis, down into your legs. Softening inward. As you soften, resistance is reduced. And here the breath can penetrate deeper into tissue. And so you breathe, and in that breath, you breathe a light. Let that presence move right down into your legs and feet. You want this Shakinta to be, many will try to focus it in the head or in the heart or some sort of limitation. You want this whole pulsing field to envelop your structure. With each breath, it strengthens. Your structure is soothed by that presence. It moves down into the legs and the feet. You want to be rooted in this presence through your whole physiology. Gently breathing, letting loose of resistance. You receive the breath. You want the breath to move from the crown to the heart, to the pelvis, to the legs, to the soles of the feet. Remember here and apply that thought from Yeshua. It says, you can deny Rukha de Kudsha. Pardon me, you can deny me, but not Rukha de Kudsha. In essence, what Yeshua is saying is you can misunderstand or reject me as a man, but you must, in order to be truly fully alive, receive and accept your daily breath. And it is that breath that gives you life. You may fail toward the Son of Man, but toward the sacred breath, you must move and receive. This, you step into deeper levels of aliveness. It is only when the breath is shut down that we shut down the healing process. Breathing with you fully and freely expanded, restored, clarified. That breath enters through the crown of the head like a fine light, and it spreads throughout your physiology, descending, and rests throughout your structure. Allow that honey sweet pulse to move. Imagine that you're out in nature and it's dawn. And the dew comes out of the sky and lands on the branches of a tree, on the blades of grass. And in the same way, the breath lands in every cell of your structure. Opening physiologically the fascia, your neural structure, reconnecting everything that's ever been separated. Stillness, yet in stillness, is the motion of breath. That pulsing move, trembling in the sweetness of that presence. That is the Shakinta pulse. Breathing with you and receiving it. Receiving that set apart breath. Allow yourself to experience a sense of literally being fully anchored in the energy field of the Creator, anchored down deep into the earth. The Shakinta wants to inhabit your whole form. Allow the breath to move fully into its incarnation. The descent is complete and you rest. In that breath. And your day is blessed by it. Thank you for joining us.